And with that said, I won't be talking about horses at all today. I'll be talking about, first of all, thanks for letting me talk about this project that we did in Wisconsin with my colleague, Dr. Ray Hutchison, through a grant from the Department of Natural Resources, which I'll refer to as DNR throughout the talk. And it's a complete departure from what I typically do in regards to Mustangs. This first slide is made up of a variety of headlines that occurred from 2000 to 2010 in newspapers across the state. So anything Milwaukee, the upper north, the west, whatever. Over the last decade, there's been increasing news stories about adolescent or young adult groups abusing or killing animals in Wisconsin for entertainment or the relief of boredom. The lack of a legal definition of thrill killing makes it difficult to determine the scope of the problem, but the use of this term has not been curtailed in news stories. A few incidents reported repeatedly throughout the state has led to increasing concern among law enforcement, legislators, and the general public. 3 cases that were noted several times, and you'll see 12 teens several times on these headlines. There's 3 primary cases that received a lot of attention. One in May 2008, two young men were accused of killing over 600 wild birds and animals in Columbia and Marquette counties. In January 2009, a snowmobiler killed 62 ducks on the Rock River in southern Wisconsin. And that same month, closer to where I live in Wapaka County, 3 young men used their snowmobiles to torture and kill 4 deer and a fawn. First, it's important to note that thrill killing, although this is not always recognized in newspapers, only deals with wild animals. The Department of Natural Resources only has the ability to control what happens with wild animals, not pet animals, not domestic animals. While the term thrill killing has been popularized in media coverage and has been used by the Wisconsin DNR officials in interviews about these cases, it does not have a specific legal definition. For example, thrill killing is not listed as a misdemeanor or felony under state law. You can't be charged or convicted of thrill killing. Thrill killing is not identified as a specific incident or class of activity in existing DNR regulations, and there's no checkbox on any DNR form to recognize that this particular incident is thrill killing. There is, however, a working definition that the DNR utilizes to identify cases they believe to be thrill killing, and that's what I have outlined here. So if an incident meets 4 of these following 5 criteria, that the incident happened outside normal hunting hours, harvest by means other than legal firearm or bow, kill is not utilized, it's in excess or disregard for daily bag limits, or if it's a group activity, meaning 2 or more subjects acting together to illegally harvest game, then it would be considered thrill killing. Now, the other thing, as we look at these criteria, all of them, except for number 3, not utilizing the meat or part thereof, are already existing violations in the law. The other thing that I thought was really interesting about this particular definition is that the criteria themselves do not even acknowledge that these activities involve animals. It's implied. For example, the DNR utilizes the term harvesting game rather than killing animals, and that they merely talk about meat or body parts to be utilized. There's no mention of intentional harm, which is very important, as intentional harm is a concept necessary to any type of animal abuse. So, what did we do? The interesting thing about doing social research is you have this idea of what you think is going to happen, and then other things are revealed, and I always find that very fascinating. So, much of the social science research in the past focused on animal abuse in general, but not in the context of thrill-killing wild animals. We wanted to create a study that would use quantitative and qualitative approaches, because this is exploratory research to understand this identified phenomenon. First, we had to assure that we were only looking at cases that met the definition that I just outlined over a time period from 2000 to 2001. And reports submitted to us by the DNR also. There were initial issues that we needed to address, including protection, because before we embarked on this particular project, there was the assumption that we might be interviewing several people in jails or prisons. So we needed to have transactional immunity waivers from county district attorneys to assure that the subjects could not be further harmed if they disclosed something in their interviews with us. What I think is really interesting is there was all of this attention of all of the cases. So from 2000 to 2010, we expected to get a large number of cases, and they were, after looking at the definition over those 10 years, they were able to provide us with 52 potential interviewees. And that means there were less cases because there's more than one person per case. So, I want to go back. I want to go now to give you an idea of the survey that we used with interviews and with a control group. That's in the next slide. And then I'm going to move on to questions that we sent to DNR wardens to explain what they thought was thrill killing. So we used the cruelty to animals inventory. I just have the first 3 questions on here. It's it's actually a 10-question inventory. The last question is an open-ended question that asks if an animal was ever hurt on purpose, how often, and what is done when the behavior occurs. This particular inventory assesses the number of separate acts of animal abuse, the degree of intentional pain, most recent acts, number of animal species abused, attempts to conceal cruelty, individual versus group cruelty, indications of remorse, and a time period for which the cruelty occurred. As we completed the personal interviews and surveys, we became more interested in this ambiguous definition of thrill killing, and we used a short survey sent by email to all DNR wardens in the state. They had the option to return the survey via email or traditional mail, and in the original survey, I only provide 3 scenarios here. There were 6 scenarios in the survey. The wardens were to indicate whether or not the activity would be considered thrill killing. So in the first scenario, we have some friends who've been hunting all day. They haven't seen any deer. They're on their way back to their hotel in their truck. They see a large buck with 12 points. They decide to speed up, hit it with their truck, and kill it. And they call the police so they can take the trophy deer home. Okay? And the response that we got from the wardens was, none of the wardens responding to the survey felt that this activity was an example of thrill killing, although one qualified this response by saying, one animal killed under the circumstances listed above, no. Multiple animals killed would then perhaps be within the realm of thrill killing. 2 other wardens thought that this would appear to be a borderline case, but did not qualify as thrill killing. In scenario 2, I don't know if all of you can see it, so I'll read it. A group of friends decide to go road hunting. They each have an assigned role. One drives, one looks for deer, another is the shooter. After killing the deer, they tag it and bring it home to be butchered. Is this an example of thrill killing? The wardens, with the exception of 3 responses, felt that this scenario was actually a better example of poaching than of thrill killing. And they saw it as the motivation for meat or some other use of the animal. The final scenario that I'm going to talk about is a group of teenagers has gone critter hunting, usually referring to small animals like squirrels and rabbits and raccoons, during the spring. And spring is also a season where hunting doesn't occur because of breeding for a lot of animals, according to the laws. They're shining raccoons with the spotlight. When they locate the raccoons, they beat them with a bat or a golf club, and they kill them. Is this an example of thrill killing? All but one of the 74 wardens felt that this activity was an example of thrill killing. Their responses included, the only reason they are killing these animals is for their own enjoyment. The pelts are not valuable, and they're not killed in a humane manner. Another said there's no reason for this behavior other than the thrill they get from the torture and killing of animals. A third, this again would be thrill killing where the kill is the reason for the trip. Nothing is utilized, and the brutality of killing adds to the rush that the kids get. What's important in these responses is that the wardens identify intent, but the original definition does not have an element of intent. And also, an agreement among wardens that if individuals utilize the kill in some way, it was not likely to be classified as thrill kill. And I think at this point, what you're starting to see is there's a lot of ambiguity. There's a lack of a consistent definition, and people are using it as an umbrella term for a lot of activities. So part of what we had to do is make some recommendations to the DNR. And I think the first one was that you need to have consistent criteria. You need to have a standard definition of thrill killing that everyone understands and can identify easily. That once this occurs, you need to have demographic data so you can determine what type of people are actually participating in this activity. We made a suggestion that hunter safety, which all of the participants I interviewed, the 8 gentlemen that I interviewed, had all gone through hunter safety. And we thought that it might be helpful to talk about thrill killing in that curriculum. And then to assess alternate intervention strategies to prevent initial or repeat occurrence of thrill kill. I'm going to skip over. Okay. The interviews revealed that incidents of thrill killing, as it's defined by that particular definition, have occurred among rural youth in Wisconsin for generations. This was also reported by contact with DNR wardens. While there's a standard working definition of thrill killing used by DNR, there's not a standard reporting of incidents, and there's some disagreement as to the application of the definition in practical situations. While thrill killing has generated intense news attention and public response, the incident of thrill killing are not numerous, if you think of 52 potential interviewees over a 10-year period, and it's difficult to determine if it's increasing because you don't have a consistent definition. 7 of the 8 interview respondents stated that the participation was either accidental or they had no intent on harming an animal for the most part. They had transportation, they knew how to use a gun, they were presented with an animal they would kill if they were hunting it, and they also reported excitement eluding the DNR. The thing that I think is most interesting is the final issue there. What is defined and punished as thrill killing depends on the social context. Not all wild animals are treated the same, and the social context becomes very important. If the participants had killed animals on their own property, their actions would not be considered illegal, nor would it have been categorized as thrill killing. Wild animals are legally titled to the state and under its domain for regulation. However, farm-raised birds, fish, and deer are not protected under this law. Some animals, including beavers, raccoons, foxes, rabbits, squirrels, can be killed by an occupant or landowner if they're determined to be causing damage in any manner that that landowner wants to do. So if they want to club the animal to death, they can. What I think is very interesting about this research is even though we had difficulties with the definition, I think it provides an opportunity to clarify and discuss our relationships with wild animals in varied social contexts that exist in the wild. So thank you. I did it on time.